Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the February 15th, 2023 Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Let's please start with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Armstrong.
Here.
Roseland. Nordstrom.
Here.
Stroman. Jones.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. Now's the time for the adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to general public comment. This is a time for the members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at this meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. Any public comment? None, we'll move forward to our consent items. Let's go to our Information Technology, Director Gilbert.
Yes, this is to apply for a grant that is managed by the state that has specific provisions for cybersecurity. So we will be applying for some grant money to fund the infrastructure that we need to further secure our information technology subsystems.
Comments or questions from this body? Thank you, Director Gilbert. We'll move. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you. Looking at the online agenda, it says a total of $8,168. The one in front of us says $80,000. Which one's correct?
That was the that was corrected. It must not have refreshed on yours. It's 80,000.
Okay. Thank you. Nope.
Clarification? All right, moving on to Human Resources, items 3 and 4. Director Stroot.
Thank you. Our first agenda item today is the adoption of the 2023 non-union wage scale. As you're aware, we commissioned a wage study. We partnered with Gallagher, and they were able to work with us from the summer of 2022 through the end of January to produce the scale that is proposed in front of you, as well as the position ranges that they recommended. This was a very collaborative process. We had members of the HR team. We had a steering committee made up of employees from all over the city. We worked with city leadership, the directors, back and forth with Gallagher, and we arrived at a product that we're really happy with. And so we would recommend adoption of this and then placing all of the non-union employees on that scale. So that would be our ask today.
Any discussion, comments? Okay, Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Questions and comments to Mr. Strout, please. Mr. Strout, I sent you several questions.
Yep.
And several comments as well. Overall, I liked the concept. And hopefully the rest of the city council members will feel the same way about this and adopt it. And it looks worthwhile to do a little bit deeper dive on this, if you will. And so the questions that are being asked now, will they be going public, or how does that part of that portion work?
So my plan is to take all, and I've received a number of questions and comments from the council, and so I appreciate that, and I want to thank the members that were to reach out to me. We're going to compile those list of questions and the answers which you got, and then hopefully if there's any questions that arise from today, we will take those, we will get you answers, and we will get that back to you before the end of the week. So before the city council meeting on Tuesday, hopefully any questions that have been posed to us will be answered. And we can attach that to the city council agenda as well, along with any other requests for information when this goes to the full council.
Thank you. And I think that's critical, is that if it gets attached to the agenda for Tuesday, because I think a lot of employees have been asking me different questions about this, and they've enlightened me on several points as well, so I want to thank them for that. And then there's a few people, I haven't got their names right in front of me, but I think there's some folks that you need to acknowledge.
Absolutely.
Specifically that were very involved with that, and that is Kip Harrington, Brittany Huska, Juliet Heidelbrittle, and Amanda Lee, Brandon Quiet, just a few of the folks that are mentioned in this memo that I got from you. And I want to acknowledge that there was a lot of people that put a lot of work into this. And I think that the other part that needs to be emphasized on this is the potential, or probably the ask that will be coming about this, is the supplement that'll be requested is only $263,000, just a little over $263,000. And that, I think that's one of the points that should be emphasized to the public. So it's not going to be that much of a change from the taxpayer's point of view on this. So I think that's about the major highlights. So please.
If I could expand on that. Yes, thank you. The team members that you mentioned, those were our steering committee. Some of the criticism that we got during our last wage study was very insular. It was not a lot of people were involved. Basically, 2 people were involved in doing the whole process, and then it was just sort of rolled out. And we took lessons from that, and we wanted to create a committee of interested team members, not on the HR team, but all through the city, that can help us ask the right questions, talk to their teams, get feedback. So when it came time to roll this out last month, people were aware, they knew what was going on. And so I really do want to thank them for their time. And as far as the maximum general fund supplement of $263, I think you hit on something important. It's very important to point out that's the maximum that this would cost. We don't anticipate that's how much this would cost, just the implementation. So it's very important that every non-union employee has to be placed on this new scale if it's adopted. Some people, so if you're a little bit behind here, you're going to get placed on the next step on the scale. That comes at a cost, but those implementation costs can be covered by the wages that are not being paid due to open positions. So what I want to make clear is that's just the placement cost.
Yes.
So I'm not obligating any other director to not ask for additional funds in the future if they need it for a different project. That's still on the table. This is just the implementation cost of the adoption of this plan. So for example, like in my department, I have a very small department. I'm going to absorb them operationally. I won't need to come back and ask for additional funds for my placements. Some people might, but there are large departments with many open positions. That is budgeted salary money that's not being spent and could be absorbed by the placement on this scale. So I wanted to make that clear. There's no chance at the end of the year, that we'll come and ask for $260,760, just because that's not realistic, just based on the placement of our employees on this scale.
I think from the taxpayer's point of view, I think that's a critical component. And then speaking to all the employees that are in the audience today, is that we will do our best to convince the rest of the council members to pass this in the current form that we're seeing today, because for me, from my perspective, it looks like a very worthwhile project that was undertaken. A lot of people being involved, so I want to thank those people as well. And I've not heard, I will say that I've not heard any negative comments about this wage study. So thank you for your input. I appreciate everyone in attendance today. And we'll hopefully see a few of you back on Tuesday night to make sure this is absolutely done. We've got to get this done. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. May I address Director Strout? Nick, I appreciate your work on this, and you have a very good work product here, and I know that there's a lot of collaboration that went into it, and kudos to you and your staff and for everyone who was involved in this. I just basically want to go back to a couple of things. In your letter to the council on February 9th, you talked about some of the aspects of this. One of the things that you wrote, if I may read from your letter, Attached, you have the proposed scale and the proposed placements of positions. Each position is given a range of a starting salary and ending salary. These ranges will allow employees to understand the potential earning power of their current role over a lifetime of employment at the City of Rapid City in their current role. Understanding the potential earning is a key factor in attracting and retaining top talent. I want the public to know that we're not doing this just for kicks. I mean, there is a purpose behind this, and this scale enables the city as an employer to attract talent, retain talent, and it helps the employees also to understand what they have to look forward to. You also point out in here, it is important to note that this proposed scale and position bands are not guarantees that an employee will reach the highest salary in their range. There are always a number of factors regarding how an employee moves throughout their scale. We look at performance, longevity, financial condition of the city, the ability to give raises in a given year, and other factors. Just because a number is the highest on a proposed band does not mean an employee is automatically going to earn that in the future. And I just wanted to confirm that and emphasize those points, because I think that's critical when taxpayers are looking at us and saying, what are you guys doing and what's happening? There's a reason behind this and there's a rationale, and I would just like, if you have anything else to add to that, I'd love to hear it, but I wanted to bring that out because we kind of summarily went through this, and I just want to have a little more background. Thank you.
Well, and I thank you for that. Yes, this scale and this compensation philosophy that we're building, this is about the future of Rapid City. So just because a number on a range is there does not mean someone is going to automatically get there. That's just the potential into the future. People want to know, if I accept this position, what am I going to be earning today? That's important. But what could I potentially earn if I give my work ethic and my years of service to the city? Where could I end up if I perform and do what's asked of me? And so, excuse me, that's really important to know. Just because a number is on there and it might be higher than what someone's getting today, that doesn't mean that they're automatically going to get there. We're really working, especially with our non-union group, to develop a merit-based step raise system. You know, you have to earn it, and it's going to go into files, and when it's denied, there's going to be reasons for that denial, and when it's earned, there's going to be reasons for people to earn that. And so we could audit it over a number of years and say, how did they go from this salary to this salary? We'll have record of all of that. And so yes, it's important, and it was a good process, and I really think every employee I've talked to is happy with the product and the idea of these flexible salaries. Our old scale was very inflexible, but this, you could talk to any director, this gives them the flexibility to attract and retain that talent, to let them know, if you stick with us, you work hard, this could be your potential in the future. So I thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much, Chairman. For Mr. Strout, first a comment, then a question. I've sat on many wage negotiation teams over the years as a teacher, as a principal, city council and lead, various organizations, and I know the work that goes into it on both sides of the table. So again, thank you to you and everybody. I won't try to name names because I'll certainly miss people, but thank you to everyone involved. This is a tremendous product, and I am excited that it's going to invest in the future of our city and wanting to keep good people around, because that's what we want. This is specifically the non-union.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So could you please give us an example of what some non-union positions are in our city?
Okay, I'll just pick some off of here. Staff auditor, fire mechanic, IT program coordinator, RTS route supervisor, long-range planner, monument production manager, human relations commission coordinator, electrical billing supervisor. It really spans all 12 of the departments that we have, and the mayor's office as well.
And that's where I was going to go. Of all of our departments, we have union and non-union staff in both departments, or I mean in all departments, right?
In most departments, yes.
Pardon?
In most departments,
In most
yes.
departments, not all, but most?
Correct. Like
Okay.
in my, for example, I don't have any union people in mine, but in most departments there are both union and non-union.
Okay, so the impact of the success of this contract will certainly spread throughout the majority of the city departments. Safe to say?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Ryan, do you have the floor?
This is for Mr. Strout. I appreciate all what you and your staff and what Gallagher has come up with the wages. Looking at the wage scale, very easy to understand for anybody to look at, even anybody who's not involved in the city. They can see what the city employees are making, and they can see kind of where they start and hopefully where they end if they stick with our city for a long time. So I appreciate all the work, especially with you and the city employees that were involved in this, and Gallagher, and you have my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roseland. Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Comments from Mr. Strout, please. You mentioned a merit system that could be, is that implemented now?
The director team is working at this. So what I've been saying is we're building a pyramid, and this is the base of the pyramid. And so the next step is to develop those policies and procedures and get them in our manual. So the short answer is no, but the longer answer is we're working on it. And I hope that in 2023, I bring that forward for those policies to be adopted. That's my goal by the end of the year, because it is important that people know, how do I progress through this scale? You know, the old government model is you just show up for another year and you get a step. Well, that's not working anymore. We need people to produce and perform. And so we're going to put those structures together so people understand how they move through this scale.
Exactly, yeah, when that policy needs to be published.
Absolutely. Yep, it will. It'll
and
come
then-
to this body for adoption.
And then I've also heard one other council member saying that if this goes public, you're going to get some feedback on it. Well, could somebody explain to me about why this needs to go public? I believe it has to go public, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't think it's anything that we need to hide.
No.
And I think it's something to be proud of. And so when I'm hearing another council member talking about when the public finds out about this, the roof is going to come off. So I think this is something to be very proud of.
Oh, absolutely. Our wages are public. Anytime our wages are public, our ranges are public. All of that is public information. We get paid with taxpayer dollars. They deserve to know what we earn and what we could potentially earn. So yes, it is very important that this is. And there are, I've received feedback from some council members too that, some of these positions, those wages are just too high. Well, no one is going to be making those high-end wages today or tomorrow or the next day. This again is for the future of Rapid City. You're going to have one day when some higher level positions leave, and we're going to need to do national searches. And we have to attract the same level of talent we have now to keep these operations going at the rate that they are. So, for example, our airport director, that's a very high level position. And if Patrick were ever to leave us, we're going to need to do a search to get someone with the same level of expertise that he has to continue that forward trajectory that he's put the airport on. So that just because that number's on a piece of paper does not mean that anybody's going to be earning that anytime soon. But the future of Rapid City, people need to know, if I take this job, I do have that potential to earn that higher wage.
Thank you. I think that's a great explanation, and just so everybody knows that I've not kept it a secret, when your policy comes out later this year, I won't be here. July 3rd is probably the last day that I'll be here, but I plan on being back before the snow flies. So,
Well, I have your email address. I'll just send you a personalized copy.
thank you. I appreciate it.
If my colleagues will indulge me, I just want to reiterate that transparency is key. These are taxpayer dollars, and we need to be transparent. Director Strout, could you explain, this is not just this wage study, we're one and done. We're going to be looking forward as well. Could you just go into that just a little bit about how you see this evolving or this
Yes,
process
absolutely.
going?
One of the really important things that we did through this process is a couple key members of my staff, Kim Beck and Kimberly Dodd, they both learned how to maintain this system. And that's another failure we didn't have in the past, is that no one was there to maintain the system. We have access to a national tool that we use, but we learned how to use it. So in the past, it could be said that this was done, implemented, put on a shelf, and then left to gather dust. But we can't do that now, because otherwise we'll be in the same place 3 or 4 years from now. That, oh, we're gonna have to panic and we're gonna have to give all these huge increases. If we maintain it and we're reasonable with our cost of living adjustments and our step increases, then we can maintain this throughout our life cycle, and we won't have to fall behind and then play catch up.
So this maintenance will be a part of the new policy and procedure?
Absolutely, yes. Yep, and we have sample policies for those from Gallagher, best practices on how to maintain these, how to create new positions, all of those things.
I think that's a very important point to
Absolutely.
share. Thank you. Okay, so was that 3 or 3 and 4?
That was just 3.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to 4? Okay, Director Strout?
All right. Well, I'm glad we use the word future a lot, because item 3 was about the future of Rapid City. Item number 4 is a cost of living adjustment request for June 18th, 2023. That's for the present. So the employees that are here now, we would be wanting to give them a cost of living adjustment based on the CPI of the Upper Midwest as it finished in 2022. It did finish at 6%. But we're here to ask for a 4% cost of living adjustment to match our AFSCME and our IAFF, which is our firefighter union. That's what they're scheduled to receive mid-year. And so we would ask that the non-union folks meet that as well. I put a new copy of the memo on there, and I do apologize. I didn't put probably the most important thing on the first memo, which is the cost. I was able to confirm with Interim Director Tracy Davis, and we did budget a 3% cost of living adjustment back in July of last year, anticipating that inflation would be down. However, that anticipation proved wrong, so we are asking for a 4% cost of living adjustment, and the additional request from the general fund would be $62,053. So we have budgeted 3% of that $248,214. We would just be requesting an additional percentage of $62,053.
For the explanation, do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Strout. One of the paragraphs in the letter you gave us that there's a requesting a 3% cost of living mid-year in addition to the 5% adjustment that they received in January. Are we talking about the same dollars here?
Let me clarify on them. Thank you for that. That is actually our FOP, our police union. They negotiated a different cost of living adjustment than the AFSCME folks and the firefighters. So their cost of living is 3% mid-year to go into addition the 5% that they got in January. So that's a different set of already budgeted numbers. So that was in a contract, it was budgeted last year, and so that's not an additional request for the FOP. This is just for the same non-union group that we were talking about on the last item.
Okay, and so that you're requesting a 4% increase to go into effect basically immediately?
June 18th, 2023.
Okay. And then was there another increase given to this group earlier in the year in January?
No.
No, so this would be a new one and the only one
This would
thus
be our
far.
only, correct, this would be our only cost of living adjustment for 2023.
Okay, I'm going to say something very unpopular right now, but we hear it a lot and it's valid and we need to embrace it. We need to take good care of our employees, and I support these raises and moving forward with this. We hear from a lot of people who, in their jobs and places they work, they don't get cost of living adjustments. They don't get these kinds of increases. They are stuck at a wage, and that's what they work at. And they say, well, how come these people are getting cost of living increases from my tax dollars when I'm not getting a cost of increase at my place of work? So we need to be cognizant of that and know that not everyone gets these kind of raises and benefits and things. So I am encouraging everybody that is involved, whether it's elected council members, employees, et cetera, to really think about and acknowledge what you have and what you are getting and what you will continue to get through this process. We hear a lot of grumbling and complaining about how bad it is to work for the city, and we don't get this and we don't get that, and yet we keep coming forward with things to try to make it better, to try to provide a good wage, to try to provide a good hourly rate, good working conditions, proper equipment, training, and all of those things. So just know, and I support this 100%, don't get me wrong, but please keep in mind that there's a lot of people who work hard in Rapid City, 1 or 2 jobs, some people 3, that don't get these kind of increases and don't have these opportunities. So it's important that we acknowledge, and I dare I say, appreciate the things that come forward, and remember who's paying our bill out there, the taxpayers and those who come to visit our community and purchase things through their sales tax dollars as well. But we need to keep that in mind as to the whole makeup of Rapid City and how it impacts people when we come forward with these things and people who don't get them. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. May I address Director Strout? Nick, I noticed in your explanation that the actual cost of living rose 6% in 2022, but you are only requesting 4% COLA. Would you explain that briefly?
Yes, and thank you for that. We had negotiated COLAs with our AFSCME union and our IAFF, which is our firefighter union, and we felt it was appropriate that if those 2 bodies were getting 4%, that the non-union folks would get 4% as well. So no employee group is getting the full 6%, so we didn't feel it was right that we asked for the full 6%. So that's the reasoning behind the ask.
I appreciate that explanation, and I think it shows you're being responsible with what you're asking to. So
Thank you.
I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Stroman. Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general comment for the employees that are in the audience is that you folks do address or visit with, as a general rule, you visit with the public quite a bit. So this is an opportunity to tell them thank you and for the appreciation that the taxpayers are providing for us, because I do a lot, and I try to respond to those queries that they give us. But with the interaction that you have for taking place with the public right now, this is an opportunity. I look at it as an opportunity not only to say thanks, but we are servants of the public, so I have to tell them thank you as well. And I appreciate all the hard work that you folks do. There's some of you folks that I get to visit with on a pretty regular basis. I am so grateful for what you're doing, being on the front lines of what you do. A lot of you folks are new faces for me here, so I want to thank you for being in attendance and listening to what we have to deliberate on today. So I can't say enough for you attending and making sure that this process is committed to you. And I just can't say enough about how much I appreciate all the work that everybody does here, not only that I've seen out in the audience, but a lot of the folks that are sitting up here on the dais as well. A lot of hard work has been put into this, and I can't say enough about thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great words. Any more discussion on item 4?
Madam Chair, may I have 1 minute of your time? I was thanked a lot up here, and I do appreciate that, but really it should be the HR team, city leadership, the directors, those that they chose to bring into this project, our steering committee. This was really a team effort, and it was a big team, and so I couldn't have done it alone. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that this really was, every department, every division was involved with this, so I really want to thank them as well. So thank you for that.
Okay. Moving along, we'll go to our police department. Chief Hedrick, would you please address number 5?
You bet. This is an item that we bring forth every year for the last few years, just an annual certification report of our participation in the DOJ's asset forfeiture program. We've been involved in the program since 1997, and essentially it is funding for our assistance that we provided during federal investigations and prosecutions. We've used the funding in the past for things like canine expenses and evidence equipment. We don't have anything that we're planning on using it this year at this moment for.
Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Didn't even get the button pushed. So,
Quick like that.
I just want to acknowledge what Chief Hedrick did last night for the Youth City Council. He came down and gave a presentation, and we touched a little bit about a variety of things. So thank you, Chief, for doing that and taking the opportunity to speak to the Youth City Council. From the little bit of feedback that I've got, because there was some other subjects I got into, is like they appreciated you making that presentation. And I know some of them had some individual questions, but I think you impressed upon them that the recruiting part, and now we will be able to help you out with the, once this item number 4 gets, number 3 gets passed, then we'll be able to help you out on retaining those employees. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. I yield.
Anything else?
No, but thank you for that. It was a good group to meet with last night, and they were a lot of fun if you haven't spent time with them. And we will be bringing some wellness items forward before the council here in the near future, things that we believe will help support our wellness initiatives, and I look forward to talking with you all more about that. So thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions on fire? Thank you. Moving to our fire department, Chief Culberson, would you please address items 6 and 7?
I sure happily will do. Thank you, Madam Chair, Committee. These two are both grants. The first one, I want to do a shout out to our non-union folks that put together these grants and did a lot of strong work to make this happen. But the first one's an AFG grant in the amount of $545,163. It's for several different pieces. First one is for 8 power lift cots with the power lift system. We have a lot of data out there about back injuries with our responders and special area EMS providers lifting patients, and this will help out significantly if we can. It would be able to replace all of those within our frontline apparatus ambulances. Also requesting 10 4-gas monitors for being able to quickly identify some of the airborne hazards at some of our incidents. And then 20 MSA lunar devices, which are fairly new to the market, allow us to do some really cool keeping track of accountability for all of our firefighters, so we'd be able to see where they are within a structure, which we cannot do today. So we're anxiously hoping that we can do that. And the last piece of this is some training money to put several of our crews through the Mastering the Fireground, Calming the Chaos. Total is the 545. Of that, we're asking $495 from federal resources, and then we'll have dollar matching just under $50,000. So, and I'll say it, I'm sure Councilman Solomon will ask, there's no other requirements other than purchasing the equipment that we've said we're going to purchase and making sure that we account for that. The other one is much the same as Director Gilbert is putting in Homeland Security. We do that every year. This is in the amount of $133,000 for some rescue type equipment to replace some aging equipment and then to add some new equipment. And there's no requirements, there's no matching for that one. So.
The city's contributions to this, I think you mentioned for 6, it was approximately 50.
6 will be $49,560, so just under $50,000, which we'll take out of our own operational budget because we're already, some of this, we were planning on doing a little pieces of this, but, and then the other, for 7, there is no matching for that.
Oh, do you want to make an announcement about the groundbreaking?
Oh, thank you. I would love to have that personal privilege to be able to do that. Everybody's invited to a groundbreaking. We're extremely excited that Station 1 is moving forward, and we're about ready to start construction. So we'll have a groundbreaking ceremony on Friday, this Friday, February 17th at 2 o'clock. We'll be right in front of Station 1. We'll do the shovel in the ground and the whole 9 yards. So I have a few people speaking, so pretty excited to move this forward and want to thank all of you. I know I've spoken to a couple of you that you might not be able to make it for some reasons that are very well, good reasons why you can't. I know you want to be there, but I want to make sure I tell you all I appreciate the support we've been provided, and 2 years later, we're finally going to be able to get a shovel in the ground and get moving forward.
Sounds great. Thank you, Chief
Thank you.
Culberson. All right, moving along to the Finance Department for items 8 and 9, Interim Director Tracy Davis.
Take 8 through 13.
Oh, sorry, 8 through 13.
8 is for some volunteers for work comp purposes for the library on RSVP Plus. Item 9 is for an assessment roll for some nuisances. There's 3 items that are listed on that assessment roll. Item 10 and 11 are some abatements that we received from the county. And items 12 and 13 are some items to declare surplus for the cemetery and the police department, and either to be traded or discarded.
Gentlemen, any questions on items 8 through 13? Thank you for that explanation. Okay, moving along, community development, items 14 through 17.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, we would ask that you pull items 14, 15, and 16 from the consent agenda.
Okay.
We have Amy Bennett with MSA Professional Services Incorporated in the audience. She's going to give a very brief presentation regarding the 5-year CDBG consolidated plan and the updated analysis of impediments to the fair housing choice. And we think that after the presentation, then the next 2 items are to approve those plans, and you'll better be prepared to take action on those plans. So with your permission, we would ask that you do that. On item 17, that is in regards to a LiDAR data study, and Kelly Brennan is in the audience and is going to give you a brief explanation to that. So if you ladies would step back and let Kelly have the lectern, please.
Ms. Brennan, welcome.
Good afternoon. A couple months ago, we brought forward the request to authorize the release of the RFP for the LiDAR study. We did that. We received 5 applications or proposals, and our scoring team has chosen Aries Associates to perform this work. So what we'll be getting out of this is new LiDAR data, which will also have 2-foot contour intervals, and then also 2D and 3D building footprints. The city's match is $27,075, and we will be using federal planning funds in the amount of $122,925. I'm here for any questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that
I have a
explanation.
question.
Oh,
Would you please explain what LiDAR is?
I'm going to bring Angela Talon up from the GIS department to explain that better than me.
welcome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the explanation.
Absolutely. So LiDAR is light detection and ranging. It's a very, they use lasers to accurately determine the elevation of the Earth's surface. So it's a very high level determination of the elevation of the ground. So we use that to then derive contours, which is used for both planning and engineering and various others.
Apologies about that. I want to make sure I do this correctly. I will need one of my colleagues to make a motion to bring items 14, 15, and 16 to the end of the consent calendar. If I could get that, please. So moved. Great. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. So we had 17. We'll go to the city attorney's office. Director Lynn Dean. All right. Kinsley Groot, I guess you're one of you. Okay. Would you please be so kind to discuss 18, 19, and 20?
Thank you. Kinsley Groot from the City Attorney's Office. Okay, so item number 18 is a pretty typical developer's agreement for TIF 87, which is the youth soccer infrastructure TIF for replacing the sewer main. So that's a pretty typical one that you'd see. And number 19 is a resolution that just makes one, that allows the correction of a different resolution that just had one, basically a typo. So number 20, though, I am not sure. Oh, there you go.
Carla Cushman, Deputy City Attorney. Item 20 is a resolution to declare real property located at 410 East Monroe Street to be surplus. That's property that the city has owned since 1973, and shortly after that, YFS built their child care center and Head Start center on the property and have operated it ever since. Staff have been talking with John Julius, who's here, and a couple members of their foundation are here as well if you have any questions for them. But we've been talking with them probably for the last year or more about transferring the property to YFS. And they are good to go on that. They'd like to do that. City staff didn't find a reason not to do that. So this item would declare the property surplus and authorize the mayor and finance director to execute the deed and take all steps necessary to transfer the property to the YFS, Youth and Family Services Foundation.
Do you want to speak on those items, or? Mr. Julius, welcome.
John Julius, CEO from Youth and Family Services. And yes, we've been in discussion over the past year. The city approached us to see if we'd be interested in taking ownership. Services have been provided in that facility for right at 50 years, and our continued move forward is to continue with preschool services through Head Start in that facility. Over the many years, many improvements. We've had 3 additions. Upkeep, repair, maintenance, major items have happened, and through our funding sources, we've been able to keep up with all of that and maintain it, and should have it in a good position as we move forward.
We've got 2 council members in the queue. Please stand by. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I don't know if this question is for Mr. Julius or for Carla. Is 410 East Monroe, is there a property or structure on that at this time, or is it open land, or what is it right now?
There is a facility. It houses our classrooms for our Head Start program, which serves children at that facility at 3 to 5 years old. There's a playground that has been developed there as well. It's fenced, has lighting, parking lots.
So it's in use with your facility right now?
And has been for since in 1977, I believe, is when it came over to YFS. It was in existence since 1973 for this purpose.
So have you been renting it from the city, or?
Yes,
what's going on in the past?
we've been in a long-term lease with the city.
And this would just transfer total ownership of the property and relieve it from the city, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Julius, I wanted to give you a heads up that I did have a conversation with Ms. Connie Olson, and she clarified everything for me. And I took a drive by your facility up there. I've had, as a previous city employee, I had a little bit of experience with that facility as well. And what you folks do up there is first rate, in my opinion. You do fantastic work with the kids, and the latest additions, changes that you made to that facility. For me, especially the chain, it's not a chain link fence, it's a very worthwhile, substantial fence that's around that facility. And so I feel very confident that the kids will be very safe and secure. So I can't say enough about the talent that you have in that facility. So I'm going to stop there because I'm running out of words for running what they call kudos. So thanks. Great job.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Madam Chair, may I use the rest of my time?
Oh, sure.
30 seconds, plus or minus. What Mr. Nordstrom said is minuscule, if, as a educator, retired educator, Mr. Julius and I have worked together many years. I know where his heart is at as a former educator and principal. The impact that YFS has throughout our community is so spread out. It impacts every neighborhood, every kind of person that lives in Rapid City, rich, poor, Native American, white, Hispanic, you name it, the impact is huge. And so if, you know, something as simple as this that allows them to keep doing their thing is, I mean, it should be a no-brainer. And I'm happy to support it, happy to support what goes on at YFS, Mr. Julius, and thank you for your leadership for that organization, because it makes a huge impact throughout our entire community.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The city attorney's in the queue. You have the floor.
I just wanted to talk in more general terms, but you know, this has been leased since the late 70s. It's leased for $1 a year, and I'm guessing we're not even collecting the dollar, so it's not like this has been a revenue source for the city. You know, frankly, we have a lot of these around with nonprofits because in the past, legally, we weren't allowed to just give them the property or transfer it, but there was a change in state law probably within the last 10 to 15 years that just recognizes that, so we don't have to do these $1 a year leases anymore. To be honest with you, we didn't even realize we owned this property until YFS approached us because there's some maintenance issues. So at that point, we were like, you're building the buildings on it, you're maintaining them, why do we even own this at this point for $1 a year? So that's how this discussion started. There's other properties where we had, particularly with YFS, we had $1 a year lease. And so we've been making an effort to try to transfer those properties because it helps the organization. They can now, if they own it, they can finance and they can use the property as collateral for funding and sources like that. So it's a win-win for both parties. We obviously have no use for this property at this point. So it just definitely makes sense to start transferring these. So if you see this in the future where we're transferring a property to a nonprofit that's been on a long lease, it's because the only reason it wasn't transferred to them at the beginning was because we couldn't legally do it. Now we legally can, so it's just a good way for us to clean these up.
No, we're not doing that. Okay. Thank you for that explanation, Director Landine. Okay. I believe we're at the end of the consent calendar, so we're going to go back to 14, 15, and 16.
Madam Chair, you can do it two ways. You can dispose of the other items on the consent agenda, and hence moving 14, 15, and 16 to non-consent, or you can hear the presentation and then take action on everything together. It's up to you.
I'll defer to the body. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that just allows everyone who's here for other items to go on about their day. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Michelle Schulke, and she will introduce Amy Bennett and explain a little bit about the presentation you're about to see. And we do appreciate that Amy's worked hard to make this brief.
Welcome, Ms. Schulke. Welcome, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's brief presentation is related to the subsequent items seeking approval of the CDBG Consolidated Plan and analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Approval of the plans will allow us to submit those plans to HUD for final approval. MSA Professional Services was selected through a competitive process, and Amy Bennett has really been the key person that we've worked with throughout this entire process. So with that, I'd like to introduce Amy Bennett with MSA, who has created this presentation for us.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Amy Bennett. I'm from MSA. I work out of the Milwaukee office. I'm really happy to be here today to go over the consolidated plan and the 2023 annual plan, and of course the analysis of impediments. I know the council has already looked at 2023 allocations, so I'm going to focus more on the AI today, and I've been asked to keep it brief, so I am going to scroll through these slides as quickly as I can. Can you see? Oh, we're just waiting for the presentation to get posted here. I can use my laptop if that's easier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I gotta plug it in.
Sorry. thought it was going to be. There was
It's like magic, but it's not.
Thanks. All right, just a minute. I thought there was a laptop that was going to be here, so sorry about that. Great, let's get it in presentation. So today, quickly, we're going to talk about fair housing, the study process, background data and findings, the identified impediments and recommendations, and again, and then through the con plan, the 23, 27 CDBG goals and estimates, and then any questions if you have at the end. So let's just keep moving here. So what is fair housing? We have a couple definitions here. Fair housing, choice is not limited by illegal discrimination. Impediments are acts, omissions, or decisions that restrict or are having the effect of restricting the availability of housing choice based on protected class status. And then protected classes, you can see on the screen, we have several federal, state protected classes. So what is the AI and why is it needed? HUD entitlement communities are required to affirmatively further fair housing. And because the city prepares a consolidated plan every 5 years as a requirement from HUD, we want to make sure that in that con plan, the affirmatively fair housing and the AI guide the use of those HUD funds. What was the process we used to come up with these two reports? Data collection and mapping. We used information from the city, from the U.S. Census. We use CHAZ data, which comes directly from HUD. We use the American Community Survey, which is U.S. Census information. And we also use HMDA data, which is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act information that's provided. We also had a lot of focus group meetings. We had about 6. We had an online community survey that was done earlier this year. We had about 1,800 respondents to that. And we had several stakeholder interviews. And if you were part of those, thank you very much. I appreciate your time because I see some familiar names here. So I think I did talk with some of you through the process. And we worked with staff quite a bit. And so a big thanks to Michelle and her staff for all the time spent going through these documents, providing information, reaching out to other organizations, trying to get information for these reports. And then, of course, this is here today at the Legal and Finance Committee, and then it'll go to Common Council as well next week, hopefully for final approval, because the consolidated plan that's currently in effect expires at the end of March. Some demographic information. I'm not going to spend time on this. We'll just take a look at the screen. It's also in the report, and it's expanded on in the report, so there's a lot of information. If you're interested, it's good nighttime read going through this report, looking at all the data. We also look at complaints. How many fair housing complaints have there been in Rapid City or for this program? Not very much. 1 in 5 in the 2019 to 2020 timeframe. However, we know that there probably are more fair housing issues out there, but they may go unreported. And that came across pretty loud and clearly through stakeholder interviews and those focus group meetings where maybe there's concern that if I report my landlord, maybe I need some accessibility changes to the unit I'm living in, afraid of eviction or retaliation. So the numbers are probably lower than what maybe the reality would be. Now we're going to get into some of the impediments, and I'll try to go through these quickly. Typical inadequate quality of renter and occupied housing based on some of that information that I described through the process. Recommended actions, develop a list of available residential sites, create a housing rehab and redevelopment loan fund, and you'll see create housing rehab program listed quite a bit in the recommended actions here. Inadequate supply of accessible rental units. We know there's a housing shortage in Rapid City. There's a housing study that was just done that we worked on. So we know that, again, from that same data sources. What are some recommended actions? Encourage retrofits to existing rental units to improve accessibility. Maybe it's universal design standards in city codes, so units are better prepared for changes to the person who's living there and needs that change over time. Offer training info to improve knowledge of reasonable accommodation requirements for the disabled. Inadequate supply of small rental units. Again, based on those information, we also know Pennington County has a wait list for those smaller units. Recommended actions, supply the study gap and offer strategies to fill it. Sometimes that's financial incentives, could be other reasons, but our recommendation is to look at that further. Inadequate supply of affordable housing. That's something we've heard loud and clear through focus group and interviews and looking at the numbers. Some recommended actions: update comprehensive plan, encourage inclusion of affordable units, create rental housing rehab and development revolving loan fund, support the Strategic Housing Trust Fund and Dakota Land Trust, utilizing TIF, utilizing low-income housing tax credits. Financial impediments. We look at the lack of loans to minorities and who's taking out loans for homes and how does that break down. You can see in this table. Some actions: credit and home buying education to citizens, education to local lenders, and improve success by some training maybe on home maintenance or other parts of the process of purchasing a home. Spatial impediments. Racial segregation, recommended actions, amend the comprehensive plan to increase supply of affordable housing in all areas of the city. So it's not just focused in one particular area, to deconcentrate that segregation. Spatial impediments, transit commuting, difficult at some times to get around surrounding areas. We heard quite a bit about transportation at our focus groups and through our interview process. Recommended actions: encourage changes to rapid transit, including later routes and routes serving neighboring communities. And lack of a local fair housing ordinance. Many communities have a fair housing ordinance. We would suggest creating one. It's just showing that this community supports fair housing, and it just is something that we would recommend including. I know that there's a committee here and there's some language in their description of that, but we would recommend also seeing actually a fair housing ordinance. Restrictions on residential uses in the zoning code. Taking a look at the zoning code, and we would recommend increased mixed uses throughout the city. We would encourage 3 or 4 unit housing in the residential districts. So that's getting at that sort of missing middle housing. Consider allowing group homes as a permitted use in residential districts. So it's all about diversifying the housing mix here in the city. And then consider reviewing the zoning code for any outdated, inherently exclusionary language. So is the code something that's approachable to anybody, or do you have to hire a land use attorney to interpret your code? Having tables, graphs, charts, things that are easily used, referenced in the zoning code. This is a 1968 zoning code, I understand. So perhaps there's some language that could be updated. And limited use of fair housing complaint procedures. Based on what? City website review. Recommended actions would be increase the amount of information available. And there is information on the city website right now, but it's just about more links and making it easier. If you do a Google search, what comes up, just certain things like that, tweaking what's already there. Lack of accountability for landlords. Again, we heard a lot about this through our focus groups and interviews. So consider creating a tenant resource center, recruit and provide training to landlords to increase knowledge about fair housing. protected classes, unrepresented on commissions, review the city recruiting process, actively recruit protected class representatives to each of your commissions, boards, committees. And here, the 23-27 CDBG goals and estimates for Michelle worked with her HUD rep recently to come up with new, I shouldn't really say new, but narrow down. I think the last plan had about 27 different goals, so this narrows it down. It's going to be a lot more user-friendly to staff and to manage the program. CDBG program administration and planning, there's always a 20% cap on funding for that. And so this is looking at the 5-year, so over 5 years, 500,000. Rapid City is allocated about 500,000 a year, estimated. And so over the 5 years, that would be the amount at that 20% cap. Housing, develop new rehab and create ownership opportunities. So this is kind of a mixture of a lot of different goals that was included in the 2018-22 plan. So that's that's almost 1.4 million over the 5 years. Public facilities improvements, 300,000. And so again, that's public facilities to public institutions like, for instance, let's see, facilities that provide services to the community, child care centers, transitional housing, things like that. And then demolition, remove blighted properties, 130,000. Public services, again, a 15% cap in programming for this, and this would include both of the public services show, housing and non-housing, 187,500. And then last, economic development, expanded economic opportunities for LMI and individuals, and that's at 50,000. That's it. That was really fast, so maybe it didn't feel like it to you, but it did to me, because there's a lot of information
I have some questions
here.
from our council members, but I'm going to go to Director Fisher first, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I saw this presentation before you saw it, I must say I did take offense to some of the statements about where our zoning ordinance is today. We have really worked hard to provide mixed-use commercial in every area of our city. We have residential uses that are allowed in every commercial zoning district today, and those are allowed throughout the city in every quadrant. It indicates in here that we don't allow 3 and 4 unit as permitted in MDR and HDR. That is a misstatement. You just walk in the door today and get a building permit. We have also put into place zoning exceptions and other administrative applications so that we can expedite these reviews to keep them out from a public hearing, whether it's a reduction in parking, whether it's a reduction in open space. When they are affordable, we look at that, especially in consideration of it. So I just wanted to point out that when I had Michelle reach out to Amy to see why were these statements in here, when that's not the position of our ordinance today, it was indicated that these are typical things that cities should look at, not saying that Rapid City has this as a default. What I will say is this. We need to continue looking at our zoning ordinance to see what, in addition, we can do. You may all recall that Sarah Hansel did a great job bringing forward a draft affordable housing study to the council, and in there, some very aggressive zoning changes that might take place to improve affordability for many of these that have cost constraints when building and constructing these developments. And we are just now getting fully staffed. Sarah has someone working under her division now that will be assisting her. And you're going to see some of these coming forward. I just wanted to clarify that. Staff has just worked too hard to not get credit for where we are today with our ordinance. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And yes, 3 and 4 families are permitted in MDR and LDR districts, as well as 2 families. Our point is that to encourage more of 3 and 4 families, it's that missing middle housing that's important. So you don't have just duplexes and then the larger scale multifamily. And so I think initially in the slide it said consider. It has been considered, it's already in your code. but it's looking at open space requirements, looking at parking requirements, looking at landscaping requirements, just to make sure that it's something that can be done through your code without additional process and waivers and all of those other things that may happen in a community to get developments through. So thank you for that. But that's kind of where we are coming from. And yes, it's certainly something we recommend to all communities that we work with as well.
Will this presentation move forward to Tuesday's other colleagues that are not here to view?
Madam Chair, this is linked to the item, and so, no, Amy will not be here to make this presentation, but we encourage the other council members to either watch this meeting or just look at the PowerPoint, because it is very descriptive in its information.
And
I am planning to attend the 21st. If that's changed, I have...
That would be at the discretion of the mayor as to whether or not she'll make that presentation.
Great. We'll defer to them, and I will encourage our colleagues to watch that, and then thank you for your contact information if they do have any questions. We do have 2 council members in the queue, if you could stand by.
Sure.
Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would hope this could be presented to the full council Tuesday night. This is an amazing amount of very, very important information. And yeah, you went by very quick, and kind of thank you, but kind of not, but we're at the length of the meeting. This is vitally important information. I have 2 questions. The slide that said supply impediments, inadequate quality of renter and owner-occupied housing. One of the numbers on here is 1939 or earlier. So is this saying that there's 2,137 rental properties in Rapid City that were built in 1939 or earlier? It's slide number 8.
This really has to do with lead risks in the community, and so we take a look at how many units in the age of the building stock in the community, and so changes in paint happened in, I think, 1978, so we look at anything before 1980, so that's where that number's coming from. So I think you're almost about 53% of your community has housing built before 1980.
So the short answer to my question is yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question on the demographics slide, I don't remember which one that was. It's early on, I think.
What?
Is of Rapid City specifically, or
Yes.
what does that encompass?
Yes, this is from CHAZ data and American Community Survey information. And HUD autofills information into the consolidated plan is in their IDIS program. It's maybe getting into the weeds a little bit, but the information available to us right now is 2013 to 2017. But this information in particular, we use 2020 ACS data.
So this information is according to...
The most current that we have available.
Okay, and this is the breakdown, according to HUD or whoever, of the population of Rapid
US
City in these
Census.
various groups.
Yes.
Wow. That's, I don't know if anyone is as amazed at that as I am, but that is amazing to look at and see that breakdown in front of our eyes. It's fascinating, and I for one want to share that information because this is an important look at our community, and I think a lot of people would like to know this information. Again, that's why, Madam Chair, I really hope we can get this kind of a presentation at the council meeting Tuesday night. We shouldn't be concerned about length of meeting. We should be concerned about quality of information that the audience here and the audience that watch glean from our meetings. And this is some vitally important stuff, so thank you.
And again, I do believe it's at the mayor's discretion. Thank you. And Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amy, I appreciate the presentation, and you created a long list of questions for me, and if it's all right, in the interest of time for today, if it's all right, I will be sending you some questions and some follow-up, and then I'll CC Director Fisher and Michelle Schulke as well.
Sure, I think we've emailed, I think I've talked with you.
Yes, you
through
have.
the process,
Yep.
so, sure.
And I think I've seen some of these slides in another presentation at some point, because a lot of them look very familiar. So overall, I just wanted to share with you, it was something you triggered something for me, is that, especially when we get into substandard housing, I believe that this city council needs to take a look at the current ordinance and needs to be reviewed again, because I think there's some current issues that are taking place because of what we have for substandard housing in this community. So I'm just going to make some comments, and the grant funding, if I'm reading this correctly, is still the same. It has not changed at all. And so I'm looking to see if there's a CDBG increase yet. And where do I go to find out how we can get that modified? Because it's been stagnant for a number of years, from my understanding. So.
Do you mean the allocation from HUD itself?
Yeah, it's not very much.
You'll want to talk to your U.S. senators and Congress.
End of March. Yep, end of March. I'm going to put this on their plate, so. Yep, and then the other thing is just as a general comment is that I figured out, this is an informational item for the rest of the city council, is that I figured out an acronym for you folks in the Community Enrichment Division. And the acronym I'm calling it is called SEED. And the easiest way to remember it is that CDBG is more or less seed money for a lot of these nonprofits or corporations, or whatever the term is correct, for the agencies that are requesting that seed money. So it comes out of the CED, is, for me, is an acronym, and so that's the way I have to remember it as an acronym. So, and now we have a seed manager as well. So, more questions, but I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We should probably read this in. So, item 14 is the MSA Professional Services, Inc. presentation of the 5-year CDBG consolidated fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 27, and updated analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. This is information only. Maybe a motion to acknowledge from Mr. Nordstrom. May I have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Thank you. Moving to the next one, approve final fiscal year 23 through 27 CDBG consolidated plan and fiscal year 23 annual action plan. That would like to speak on that? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Fair housing choice. Got a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. Okay, that should be the end of consent. Oh, that was consent. Okay, moving. We have a public comment for the non-consent items opened. No one's here. And closed. Moving to the Finance Department. Introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6563 regarding supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2023.
This is our first supplement for the year. Just a couple of the items that are included in there. There is additional money for Black Hills Council of Local Governments of $8,850. They had a request for, we had a budget of $30,000, but they needed $38,000. So we're just going to supplement the money in there for that additional funds for this year. We also had a request from the DAL for some HVAC work in the amount of $30,000. And then last year, you all approved a loan for the parking lot and area for the parking structure. And so that was approved after the budget was approved. So we're just putting the loan payment amounts in the actual budget so the payments can be made.
Questions? Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you for the clarification on the Black Hills Council local governments, because I was seeing two different numbers, and then so that clarifies what that need changes. So thanks for that update.
Okay. Welcome a motion.
Move approval of item.
I have a motion and a second on item 21. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Office number 22, the second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6562, an ordinance changing the name of the Rapid City Human Relations Commission to the Rapid City Community Relations Commission, along with some miscellaneous cleanup of the ordinance. Director Landine, do you have any comments on this?
I know there were some questions during first reading, so I think they've been answered. So unless there's additional questions, I wouldn't have anything to add.
Okay, we've got a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving to item number 23, approve resolution number 2023-017, a resolution to support the preservation of historically significant resources at the site of the Rapid City Indian School Sioux Sanatorium, Oyate Health Center. Councilman Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is an item that for the past year, or maybe more than a year, several people have had discussions amongst themselves in the community, native and non-native. I know several members of the council. Chair, you have. I've talked to people in the community about the fate of the Sioux San Hospital building. It's kind of a landmark in our community. It's a historical structure. There's a lot of history there, and it's actually a very beautiful building. And the question was, what's going to happen to that when the new Oyate Medical Center opens on the same campus there in West Rapid? And all that we could ever discern was that it was scheduled for demolition. And in talking with people that use the facility, that work at the facility, they were wondering, well, is there something you can do to try to save that facility and repurpose it? It could be used for classrooms or education. It could be used for short-term stay for patients that come to the Oyate Healthcare Center for treatment. It could be temporary housing for traveling healthcare providers. It could house services or programs that are available to the Native Americans only on the reservation, and they can't always travel down there to get those things taken care of. So with that background, we thought, without obligating any city funds, because it's not our property, it's federal land and it's a federal building, that at least we could approach our congressional delegation to see if there was something they could do on the federal level to repurpose that site and save that historical structure. It's on that basis that we went to work. Several people contributed some historical background and very useful information that we were able to come up with this proposed resolution. However, now it has come to light recently, within the last 24 hours, that there is in fact a plan that extends beyond just demolition of that structure. And what we have learned is that as recently as 2018, there was a cost estimate to save the building, which was approximately $17 to $19 million back then. There was also an agreement that's been finalized with the contractor to effect the demolition, and that would have to be dealt with. There was also challenges finding someone who could commit to the ownership, oversight, and maintenance. And Oyate did not want to divert funds from their budget that is meant for patient care away to restructuring this building. And I mean, that certainly was never my intention, to try to take away from the patient care mission of the Oyate Center. So with that information about the costs involved, and that there is a plan that would include a garden memorial on the campus. There's a plan for the outbuildings, apparently, to complement the campus, a farmer's market, a coffee shop, whatever they're going to do. It is something, that is a plan that is obviously much more well thought out than we had ever understood it to be. So for that reason, even though there are still people that would love to see that building saved and repurposed, I don't think that it's feasible, and for that reason, I would either withdraw the resolution or move to table it at this time. Thank you. I yield.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Stroman. Okay, moving on to community development. Reading of ordinance number 6561, an ordinance amendment to amend sections 17.12.050, 17.12.070, and 17.40.050 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to the height of certain structures.
Hey, this is great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is all about housing and what we can do to make it easier for those that want to come in and be creative in design. I would like to turn it over to Sarah Hansel with your permission. She's worked hard on bringing this ordinance forward.
Thank you. I'll give a brief overview. This is a fairly simple ordinance amendment. This proposal is to increase the height limit within 2 of our residential zoning districts. The height limit in the medium-density residential district and the office commercial zoning district are currently 35 feet or 3 stories. Over the last several years, we've had, fortunately, we've had many multifamily developments come through and be constructed in our community. Looking back over 4 years of those requests, we noticed that many of them were requesting height exceptions and that all of those height exceptions were approved. So in response to that, we're bringing forward this ordinance amendment to add that additional 5 feet of height that would be permitted under the code. We believe that this will help to streamline the development process for some multifamily structures. We see that as a first step in terms of evaluating height within the city, and we're recommending that it be approved. And I'll stand for any questions you have.
We have a first and second on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have a point of personal privilege from Mr. Nordstrom before we adjourn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start this off with saying that this council got hoodwinked on this logo process that we went through, and I think a lot of people that came forward to talk to me about this issue feel very disenchanted, lack of trust with the city council right now, and there's some major concerns that were addressed out there and unsolicited. People would come up to me and ask what's going on, and there was a lot of misunderstanding, and during the, shall I say, the bamboozle part of this whole thing, is that there was a lot of misunderstanding or misinformation being disseminated to the city council. I had to do a lot of research in the last couple of weeks to find out exactly what was going on. But the bottom line is that I would encourage the city council to consider smoking this out or reconsider that tabling motion, because there's a lot of information that was left out, and several employees are still confused about why this went forward to the point it went to legal and finance, and nobody said anything, and then the following Monday night, it was tabled without any discussion. So I think the council got bamboozled by the information that was provided to them, and I would like to see this item be taken off the table so we could have more discussion on it. And I think it's fair that the employees hear why it was being tabled for that motion was being made, because what was written in the Rapid City Journal is only a portion of the total issue. So If there's anybody that has any objections to that, I'd like to start the procedure for a reconsideration or a smokeout for that proposal on Tuesday evening.
Right. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
for the time.
Nordstrom. Thank you. Okay, these items, along with Public Works items, will be forwarded to Tuesday, the 21st meeting. We're having that in these chambers on Tuesday because of the President's Day holiday on Monday. We will see you in chambers Tuesday at 6:30. Gentlemen, this meeting's over.